Saturday morning had arrived, and the Loud family was wide awake for the big day. The CNI unit had been successfully delivered over to the Royal Woods Hospital the other night by the hospital staff after Lisa completed the programming on it, and it was fully ready for use. Lisa had already written out the plans for Lincoln's surgery and just how the machine would be used to guide Dr. Lloyd and the other surgeons throughout the surgical procedure. Once they had been completely into new advanced such technology like this, they would need assistance from the machine's creator in order to properly operate it. To properly repair the damage that is done to Lincoln's brain and eliminate the hemorrhage, the injection needle would need to be inserted through the neck of the back of Lincoln's brain, just above the brainstem. Once the needle was far in enough, the CNI unit would inject such metanites into Lincoln's brain, which would traverse through it, eliminating the brain hemorrhage and repairing all the damaged brain tissue and metanites that came into contact with. The metanites had been programmed with advanced sensors that would easily detect the damage of the brain tissue and the hemorrhage, so they would be easy to seek out the damage and repair once they injected into the brain. Once Lisa headed towards downstairs, she found the rest of the family waiting for her at the dinner table. "Hey Lisa, you ready for the big day?" Rita greeted Lisa as she sat down on her spot. "Not quite yet," Lisa replied. "I shall require nutrients before we head off to the hospital. One cannot perform surgery on an empty stomach." "You got a point right there," Rita replied. "There's plenty of eggs, bacon, and sausages, so eat up." As Lisa began chowing down, Lori texted Bobby and informed him about Lincoln's surgery, letting him know that Lisa would be testing the CNI unit on him. Once they arrived at the hospital, Ronnie Ann and the rest of the family had also been notified and promised to be there at the hospital once Lincoln went to undergo surgery. Everyone was so eager to see the machine in action for the first time. Yet it was so slightly worried about what the outcome would be. Would it succeed or fail? This would be the first time Lisa has ever participated or assisted in the surgery. So say that she was nervous just to be untrue. Despite her genius mind, Lisa had her emotions, and she couldn't let the hind her down. Not after what's coming this far in the mission to save Lincoln. "Hey Mom, Bobby said that he and his family are going to join us in the hospital to observe Lincoln's surgery. Ronnie Ann is going to be there as well," Lori informed. "You think it'll go well?" Lola asked. "I hope it does, or Lincoln won't make it," Lana replied. "Don't say that, Lana. I believe Lisa's invention will save him," Luan snapped. "So do I, Luan," Lenny replied. "Let's not stress about it, girls. I'm sure Lisa knows what she's doing," Lynn Sr. assured the family. "I agree with you, Father," said Rita. "Let's not panic over Lincoln. I'm sure things will turn out all right in the end." Lisa ate, however, she could not stop the shaking of one feeling that had came over her since the night before heading to bed. What was the emotion that Lisa had always had the hardest to express? Fear. Ever since she completed the CNI unit, Lisa had experienced a growing level of fear of her brother's life, and she recalled her sisters, even though her parents were telling her that something might go wrong during Lincoln's surgery. As much as Lisa wanted to deny it, she knew for a fact that they all had a point, and that she could no longer deny it. As accurate as the virtual simulation of the CNI unit was successfully curing a patient of brain damage, Lisa knew that reality was much different. "I mustn't panic. Lincoln can be saved. I know it. What if this wasn't really accurate? Will it still work?" Lisa thought to herself, trying to ease the growing inner stress. As hard as she tried to though, she didn't shake the fear growing inside her, the fear that the machine might do the opposite of what Lisa intended to do. If the CNI unit somehow harmed Lincoln, Lisa didn't know her family would ever forgive her. "Lisa, are you alright? You seem rather tense," Luna wondered, noticing Lisa's nervous fidgeting. "It's nothing," Lisa lied. "I just simply pondered my plans for Lincoln's surgery." "I'm alright," Luna replied, unsure what Lisa was being honest. It was clear that she had disturbed something about it, yet Luna could not be so sure what it was exactly. "Are you sure about that, Lisa? You don't look all that well," Lola chimed in. "I assure you everything is fine. I do appreciate if you stop pointing fingers at me," Lisa snapped, rather aggressively. This one's got everyone's attention, which only seemed to be in agitate Lisa even further. "Why do you always stare at me in such concern? I am trying to prove my point here that I'm perfectly fine," Lisa questioned everyone in annoyance. "Well, you rather got aggressive there for a moment, Lisa," Rita pointed out. "We're just a bit concerned, that's all." "You seem to be dwelling on it in the dark," Lucy added. Lisa then glanced at Lucy with an annoyed look, and then sighed and excused herself from the table, heading towards upstairs shortly afterwards. Something's definitely up with Lisa. She hasn't like that at all, and as well as I can't even remember how long, Lana points out. Maybe her mind is lost in the dark, Lucy guessed. Not likely, Lynn Jr. scoffed. Little did she know, she seems anxious when Lola and Lana brought up the topic of Lincoln possibly not making it through surgery, Lori said. Lenny glared over at Lana and Lola. Nice going, you two. You both upset Lisa, she scolded. Hey, we didn't mean to. We were just worried about Lincoln, that's all, Lola retaliated. We all are, Lana added. Girls, that's enough, Rita ordered. I will go speak to Lisa and sort this out. As the girls continued their argument, Rita headed upstairs to find Lisa, who seemed to be in Lincoln's room, no surprise. She had expected her to go there, yet Rita had completely have a good idea as to why. Once she entered Lincoln's tiny room, Rita saw that Lisa was standing near the window, gazing calmly out with a neutral expression on her face. Although Lisa's expression was neutral, Rita knew that there was something about but calm because she noticed the streaks on Lisa's face. That would greatly worry Rita if she knew that Lisa was definitely upset about something, and she was pretty sure she knew what it was. Lisa, are you okay? Rita asked worriedly. Lisa just kept her back to Rita, but spoke. Doesn't matter, she asked simply, almost in no emotion. Those words confirmed Rita's suspicions. Lisa, what Lola and Lana did ask you upset you? She asked calmly. Lisa just said nothing for a moment, then she spoke up, with her back still turned to Rita. I'd be lying if I said it didn't, Lisa replied, sounding distressed. As much as I've been wanting to deny it, or rather been denying it, I can no longer suppress my emotions as I've been keeping this bottled up inside me. Lisa then turned to Rita with an expression both distress and possibly fear as well. And to tell you the truth, I am not frightened, I'm terrified, Lisa confessed, now tears visible in her eyes. I know I should be relived in life, knowing that my invention has a chance of working to save Lincoln's life. But I can't deny that everyone telling me again and again it's the fact that there is a chance that the CNI unit might not work. Rita was shocked at what Lisa had been containing the fear inside this time, but Lisa wasn't done yet. I know my past inventions didn't succeed for the first time, but I know that this one may be much different from those, and it's scaring me, Lisa continued. Everyone in this family and everyone I know and that knows that Lincoln is counting on me to save his life, but I can't deny the possibility of you all might be right. Lana and Lola pointed out that a while ago, everyone's been constantly telling me, speculating that something could go wrong with the CNI unit, but I can't keep possibly be locked away any longer. I know for a fact that everyone's been saying it all right, and it's been eating me up inside all this time, and it still wasn't that until Lana and Lola brought it up for the 1000th time, and then I stopped denying it. Rita couldn't believe it what she was hearing. Lisa, of all the people, was scared of her mind, afraid that her own creation might fail to save Lincoln's life, and it had been eating Lisa up inside all this time. Lisa had never been the one to show such emotions like this, although with Lucy it was different. Unlike Lucy, who rarely showed any emotion at all, Lisa still showed some levels of emotion at different times. However, the fear and sorrow and emotions that Lisa almost never showed. The only time that she showed much emotions was when Lincoln suffered from the accident, learning from Dr. Lloyd that he could possibly die from brain hemorrhage, but that came into being told that interventions might fail for the first time around. Lisa usually shrugged it off. This, however, was different. Lisa was actually terrified if her invention might fail for the first time around. Normally something like this wouldn't be too serious, but Rita understood why Lisa was so upset and distraught about it. It was because of her brother's life was on the line, and if something like the CNI unit, without being the last hope of saving around Lincoln, might be dead by the time Lisa corrected the problem and got the machine working again. If this machine doesn't work, Lincoln will die at the end of the month, and it's all Luan's fault that Lincoln is the way he is now, Lisa said with a sniff, her tone was harsh and anger. That stupid-minded clown just wouldn't stop with her reckless pranks, and because of her, Lincoln is in a horrible state. I am the only hope that it has to ever making him out alive, and I know for a fact that Luan didn't mean to cause Lincoln's accident, but it's her fault that he was nearly killed and reduced, particularly a vegetable. I have practically taken the burden of saving Lincoln's life, all because of Luan's big mistake. And because of that, I had to keep all my emotions locked away, and I can't hold it anymore. Rita wasn't sure what to say, and she thought she was too shocked to say anything at first. But all this time, Lisa had been keeping all of her contempt and hatred towards Luan all locked up inside her in order to focus on saving Lincoln's life, and was now coming down to her. The possibility of the CNI unit for the first time around might be also contributed to Lisa's fear growing and anxiety, and then she had been willing to be on the burden of the building of the machine and try to save her brother's life. Yet all this time, she had been hibernating in her great fear and sorrow after everything had been transpired since April Fool's. Yet Rita wasn't sure if this idea of the CNI unit failing would upset Lisa. Maybe perhaps something more. Lisa, are you so upset about your invention might not save Lincoln? Trust me, I completely understand. And also, I should tell you right now that we all hate what Luan did to all of us on April Fool's Day. And what happened with Lincoln was a result of her recklessness is unforgivable, Rita said, and calmly. It's far from unforgivable. I can't even begin to tell you how much hatred I've been hibernating inside towards Luan ever since this whole nightmare began. I'll never forgive her for what she has done, no matter how sorry she is. If this machine fails and Lincoln ends up dying, I can't promise you I will never want anything to do with Luan again. And as far as I'm concerned, she will no longer be considered a sister to me, nor anyone else in this house, Lisa hissed, with pure hatred in her voice. Lisa, Rita began. Luan stole his life, and for what? Just to laugh? How could everyone be so calm than having the goddamn prankster around? Lenny doesn't seem to care about how serious this is. Hell, she's practically denying the Luan after Lincoln suffered from this accident, and she doesn't have the honor for being a sister or member of our family. After putting us through hell on April Fool's Day, and for nearly killing Lincoln, Lisa thundered furiously, tears streaming down her face. Lisa, please listen, Rita pleaded. We can't change what happened. And yes, I can tell you what Luan did was very serious. However, that doesn't give us the right to treat her like complete garbage. As much as I hate what Luan did to us on April Fool's Day, and for what she did, I still love her as my child. How could you possibly love someone every might, and even though they were still responsible for Lincoln's possible death if my invention fails? How could have any of us love or forgive Luan if something like that ever happens? Lisa demanded. I can tell you right now that forgiving Luan is something that wouldn't happen right away. But believe me, most of us will eventually come to our terms and forgive her about it, Rita replied. Well, I could promise you this, Lisa said coldly. If Lincoln does die, I am never forgiving Luan. In fact, I will completely denounce her as my sister. I'm sorry, but I can't forgive someone like Luan so easily. Not after everything she's done. Rita had no idea that Lisa could harbor such more hatred towards Luan, and it was so understandable that the whole family couldn't exactly forgive her so easily. After all the hell Luan had put for her family on the year of April Fool's Day, and putting Lincoln in the hospital busted a spine and brain damage further that proved the point. While Rita understood that it was a good majority of what Luan did on April Fool's Day to Lincoln, and partly from both hers and Lynn Sr.'s fault for not putting a stop to their pranking, but she couldn't just bring herself to hate Luan like Lisa clearly did. Yes, the idea of Lincoln dying from brain hemorrhage was terrifying, and Rita knew that Luan was to blame for that. However, she was still had loved Luan no matter how badly she messed up. Lisa, however, didn't clearly share the same emotions as Rita, and it was possible that the same day the other girls yet either. It was just one question that Rita still wanted to answer to. Lisa, are you upset of the possibility that your invention won't work on Luan? Is it because you're angry at her? She asked. Lisa pondered the question for a moment, and then she finally answered. Like I said, I'm terrified for Lincoln's life, but also angry at Luan for being the cause of all this. I just wish I could have done something to prevent Lincoln's accident from happening. Yet I did nothing. In the most intelligent sibling in the family, instead of trying to find a way to stop Luan, I built a bunker for all of us to hide from her. I shouldn't have to run from Luan, but yet I was a fool for contributing to basically forcing the whole family to hide inside, rather finding a way to stop up and Luan and stand up to her. And that makes me a failure if Lincoln's the only one who was willing to take a stand against Luan. Look at what happened to him as a result of that, the small genius answered sorrowfully. The sentence said everything. Lisa, Rita said, crouched down to Lisa's level. What happened to Lincoln wasn't your fault. None of us predicted that he would be badly injured from the ways of Luan's pranks. If anything, me and your father are partly to blame. If we honestly have stepped up to Luan and put a stop to her pranking like real parents, Lincoln's accident might have been prevented, but not like this as forsaken imbeciles. And we just need hid away like cowards. If anyone was to take blame for getting Lincoln into this horrible mess, it's me and your father, not you or your sisters, and we're simply just trying to defend us from Luan, not to drive us into hiding, but not to ever think you're a failure, Lisa. I know for a fact that Luan feels really sorry for the way she did to Lincoln, but the rest of us on every Fool's year on April Fool's Day. Lisa knew that Luan is absolutely terrible as hell for putting her family through the single April Fool's Day, for nearly killing Lincoln in the process. Yes, Lisa still had hard times expressing her hatred towards that she cared for Luan, and because of it, Lisa hated herself for hiding her family and rather find a way to take a stand for Luan. Lincoln had been the only one who was willing to do that, and he ended up paying an ultimate price for it. Because of this, Lisa felt partly responsible, and it was tearing her apart. I don't know what to do, Lisa said, whipping the tears from her face. I'm just so frightened. What if this machine fails and we lose Lincoln? I could never live with myself knowing that I've prevented his death if I just stood up to Luan instead of hiding us from her. Rita picked up the small genius and embraced her gently. Lisa, I believe in you with all my heart. You have done some things I never thought or dreamed of, and this machine you built proves it. Rita comforted. I never would have guessed such advanced technology like this would have been achieved in this current day and age. Yet you managed to prove yourself and the whole world wide wrong. I mentioned before, and I know that anyone would save Lincoln's life, it could be you. Whatever you do, don't give in to fear, and that will just do this to discourage you, and that will lead to failure. If anything, I know you could save Lincoln, and I believe everything will turn out fine at the end. We may not be able to prevent Lincoln's accident from happening due to the cowardice, but at least we can have hope in knowing that you may be the one to save his life. You're my smartest kid, sweetie, and I know this machine will work, and I just know it will. Don't focus on the bad stuff, only success. Do that, and I know you'll succeed. Lisa felt the urge of confidence rush through Rita's words as the comfort cut through the sorrow and harboring against Lincoln's accident. Everything Rita had said was true, and Lisa knew it. In area of the personality, she couldn't forgive Luan easily as Linny and her parents had, but Lisa knew that what's done is done, and she couldn't change the past. Yes, Lisa knew and personally hated Luan for being responsible for creating the prank trap that nearly claimed Lincoln's life, for putting everyone else's lives at risk with her dangerous pranks. But she knew deep down that her mother was right about Luan being truly sorry for it all. Luan clearly showed her remorse at the hospital the day of Lincoln's accident, and then back at home. So after learning about the brain hemorrhage that had been formed in Lincoln's brain due to a heavy amount of brain damage and he received from being clearly crushed underneath the fridge, Lisa couldn't deny the fact that she was scared of losing her one and only brother. But wasn't there anything that could be done about it? If the CNI unit failed, Lisa and her family would have to find another way to move on after Lincoln's death. However, it would be hard, it may be, but Lisa wouldn't let that happen. Not on her life. She and her sisters put all of their blood, sweat, and tears into construct the CNI unit, and Lisa wouldn't let that work to be for naught. And then she wouldn't allow her any fear any longer. So Lisa hadn't forgot about how she helped Luan try to recover from her depression by creating a dream simulator with a headband attached to a simulation where she meets up with Lincoln near the mystical fountain, where he had told her that Lisa would save his life. But even on that time, Lisa still harbored the contempt towards Luan, but then she realized that what she was doing was wrong. As much as Lisa hated for what Luan has done not just to Lincoln, but was also to the whole family in the year, she knew her mother was right about letting her go all the hatred. Unknown to the two of them, Luan had been hearing Lisa raise her voice while she had gone to use the restroom, and looked over at Lincoln's door was just open enough for her to hear everything what's going on down there. Luan had been listening to everything Lisa and Rita were saying, and it both shocked and guilt tipped over her, and she had no idea that Lisa harbored so much hatred towards her all this time. She couldn't exactly blame Lisa for it. Everyone else had been on edge with Luan ever since Lincoln's accident, so it wasn't too much of a surprise that Lisa would also harbor some of the contempt towards her as well. But Luan had also had no idea that Lisa hated to her for the extent. The fact that Lisa would be completely denounce her if she even came closer to letting her live in the house with them or the thought of being kicked out of the house was frightening. The thought of Lincoln dying was just much worse, and after all the hard work and building the CNI unit paid off, would it fail? I have carried so much hatred for Luan, even during the times I even tried to help her, Lisa said softly. I never considered how much pain herself that she must have felt for all this. You need to let go of your hate, Lisa. If you don't, you'll never be able to move on, Rita replied. As Luan prepared to head back downstairs, she accidentally tripped over one of Charles the dog's rope toys and bumped against the door, causing it to open up. It immediately caught her attention, around Lisa and Rita's attention as Luan struggled to get the toy dog off her foot. Luan, what are you doing? Rita asked in surprise. Luan wasn't sure what to say. She made it pretty clear that she had been busted ever since she noticed Lisa glancing at her with an expression that made Luan realize that she had been eavesdropping on her and Rita. Care to explain what you're doing? Lisa demanded. I was just using the bathroom when I tripped over Charles's dog toy coming back down here. Luan lied, trying to convince her that she was spying when Lisa knew she was a fool. Your stunned tone of voice tells me otherwise, Lisa snapped. Why did you need to spy on me and your mother? Do you not attempt to deceive us any future and then with excuses? I know you never used the bathroom because I didn't hear the bathroom door open or close, so you can knock it off of your lies. You have inflicted enough damage to this family already, or you're trying to lie. It will only further the damage. I think Lisa has a point, Luan, Rita agreed sternly. I think you better explain yourself right now. Seeing as there was no gain out of this, Luan surrendered. Fine, I might as well, she replied, sounding a bit upset and a bit angry. Lisa made it already clear that she hates me every existence, and I honestly can't blame her. I get it, alright? I put everyone through hell every April Fool's Day and put Lincoln in the hospital, so what more do you want from me? That doesn't answer my question, Luan. Why were you eavesdropping on me and Lisa? Rita demanded. I didn't intend to, but I heard Lisa yelling up here and came to see what was going on, and that's when I heard everything you were saying, Luan answered, glancing over at Lisa. Is it true? Do you really hate me that much? Lisa was almost too ashamed to say anything, but she knew she had to tell Luan the truth. To be perfectly honest, Luan, as much as I don't want to say it, Lisa answered with a sigh, I do. Yes, I very much do. And what you have done to this entire family every year on April Fool's Day and on Lincoln today on that day was completely unforgivable. And even though I kept it hidden until now, I truly believe that you don't deserve your forgiveness for what's happened. Lincoln could end up dying if this machine fails to save his life, and it will be all on you. And it's everyone who's been telling me virtual reality simulations are different from reality, and that means there is a chance that the CNI unit might fail. Do you have any idea how much every thought terrifies me, Luan? I've been keeping these emotions locked away all this time, but yet I can no longer keep them locked away, and that machine is ready to be used for the first time. Tears were now visible in Luan's eyes as she took everything that Lisa threw at her, and it was true. Lisa had been bluffing when she ran like crazy towards Rita. Look, I'm truly sorry for everything, and I've done to this whole family on April Fool's Day, and I've just was even more far as to know what happened to Lincoln as a result of my recklessness. I promise that I really mean it, Luan confessed through her tears. If you all truly hate me that much, maybe it'd be better if I just leave this place forever. No, Luan, Rita said, walking over and embracing her. None of us want you gone. If your sisters say things like that, they're just scared, and people just don't tend to think rationally. But when that happens, Lisa said herself, may even clear a point of saying about being scared herself. But what if Lincoln dies because of me? How could I ever face my family again if it happens? Luan sniffed. He won't, honey, and I know Lisa will succeed. You know why? Rita smoothed. Why? Luan asked. Because you've all helped her do the impossible and was building that machine that no one could even have seen it built. And since Lisa is all you're helping her, I believe that this invention of hers will work without a fail, Rita answered. Also, Lisa will be confessing to me on how she's willing to let go of her hatred towards you. Isn't that right, Lisa? Lisa looked up at Luan with a guilty expression and then spoke up. I've said so many horrible things about you, harbored so much hate that I contempt towards you. I just wanted to say that I no longer want that anymore, she confessed. I want to save Lincoln's life, and that all that matters to me is matter to us as well. I can surely ask if you forgive me for all the hatred I've carried towards you. Luan was surprised and shocked. She hadn't expected Lisa to beg her for forgiveness, and this was something Luan believed that she should be doing, but she understood where Lisa was coming from. Lisa, you have every right to hate me from everything I have done to you and everyone else in this family every year. But trust me when I say this, I can't tell you how desperate I am to see Lincoln back to normal again. However, I understand what you're saying, and I can't expect everyone to forgive me right away, but I will gladly accept your forgiveness, Luan said. We've come this far, and I do hope our hard work pays off. Lisa smiled, and she felt at peace for the first time in a while. She rushed forward and embraced Luan. I will save our brother, I promise, Lisa said confidently. I won't let our hard work be naught. And I promise that I'll never prank everyone on April Fool's Day again. That's a promise, Luan said, embracing Lisa's back. Rita joined in and embraced the two girls as well. I'm so happy you two made up, but we should probably get going. We don't want to keep the hospital waiting, Rita said. Yeah, you got a point there, Luan replied. We better get a move on then, Lisa declared. With that being said, all three of them headed out to Lincoln's room and back downstairs where the rest of the family was waiting for them. 20 minutes later, the Louds arrived at the hospital where Ronnie and the Cascades were waiting for them in the lobby. Dr. Lloyd and the two male nurses were also there as well, with Clade standing nearby. You there, Miss Santiago said with a glee. I can't wait to see Lincoln back to normal. Clyde gleamed excitedly. Glad you arrived. Good, Dr. Lloyd said. They glanced over at the Cascades and Clyde. I take it that you're all here to observe Lincoln's surgery, I presume? Yeah, all of the friends of the Loud family, Mr. Santiago said. Well, I am his close friend as well, Clyde added. Well then, you should plenty of room in the surgery room and the observatory room. You should be able to observe Lincoln's surgery there, Dr. Lloyd answered, then glanced down at Lisa. I will lead you to the surgery room and will need your help operating the CNI unit. I would be honored, Lisa replied. I trust you received the surgical procedure plans with the emails to me the other night. Yes, I did, said Dr. Lloyd, nodded. Me and the other surgeons are heading over there before you arrive, and I think we've got a plenty clear idea of what to do. But we'll need your help operating the CNI unit, since it's a bit too advanced for everybody to use on its own. So we'll need you to know how to operate it properly as to risk not harming Lincoln. Excellent. I will need to change into some surgical gear before entering the surgery room, Lisa informed. Also, has Lincoln been sedated? Yes, and we got him some strong sedatives that would keep him asleep for several hours, and he should wake not long after the surgery is over, Lloyd answered. Ah, good, Lisa said. Then I should be off then. Dr. Lloyd glanced at the Loud family, Clyde the Cascades. Follow me and my two nurses to the observatory room, and me and Lisa will head over to the surgery room, he instructed. The group then followed Dr. Lloyd and his nurses down a long hallway where they eventually came to a fork at the end. The left hall leads to the surgery room and the right hall leads to the surgery observatory chamber. The two nurses led to the Cascades, Clyde, and the Loud family down the right of the hall, while Lisa followed Dr. Lloyd in the left of the hall towards the large surgery room. Once they entered, Lisa saw Lincoln facing down with the modified surgical bed with dozens of straps restraining him in places. He was fully sedated and then hooked up to a heart monitor and respirator which would provide him oxygen and monitor his vitals during the surgery. A highly advanced ultrasound unit would be also used to monitor inside of Lincoln's brain. Once the Mennonites are injected inside, it would ensure that everything went smoothly. The surgical table Lincoln laid on was modified and in a way that would be justified, as Lincoln would be slightly kneeling down position. Once the incisions in his skull had been made to allow the surgical of the injection of Mennonites. Due to the position of the table currently set, the CNI unit wouldn't be able to extend far enough to allow the injection needle to enter the incision correctly. The surgical table was too wide. In order for the machine to successfully inject the Mennonites into Lincoln's brain, the table would be raised up in stand-up position, and then the hard headrest would also lift a little bit as long as the lower part of the table would raise up so little that it would look as if Lincoln was kneeling down. The straps onto the surgical table will hold Lincoln in place to ensure that it didn't slide off once it was adjusted. Dr. Lloyd handed Lisa a surgeon outfit, which she quickly slipped onto, then placed a mask over to cover her mouth and nose. Once she was in the surgeon outfit, Lisa glanced up at the windows heading towards the observatory chamber and saw her family with the Clydes and the Cascades watching in action from above. The three other surgeons were dressed in surgical outfits with masks, and then they entered the room, although through another door nearby with the portable trays filled with surgical tools and a small cardinal saw used for making skull incisions, along with the electric hair trimmers and sanitizer. Dr. Lloyd slipped onto a small microphone own collar of his doctor's coat, which will allow him to communicate with the Louds, Clyde, and the Castrades in the observatory room. Lisa did the same. Afterwards, the special coverings were placed over Lincoln with a small opening near where the incisions would be made. This was to ensure that no debris or anything else would be harmful to get into Lincoln during the surgery. We'll need to shave a small portion of hair out of the back of Lincoln's head to make a successful incision onto the flesh of the skull, Dr. Lloyd instructed his surgeons. Then they glanced over to Lisa. Your assistance is helping us. It will be much appreciated. I would be honored, Lisa said, pulling up the metal stool next to the surgery table. I have no experience in performing a surgery, but I will have carefully researched various brain surgery procedures that should go and assist you without a fail, thanks to my superior intelligence as well. Good, then the surgery should go along smoothly, Lloyd replied. Once everything was in place and the surgery had begun, Dr. Lloyd had shaved back a small piece of hair from the back of Lincoln's head to make sure so the skin and flesh could be easily the incisions once it's made. Once the hair has been shaved off, Lisa sanitized the skin with one of the surgeons, fetched a tiny scalpel from this medical surgical tray, and then gently began making a slow U-shaped incision into the flesh. Some of the Louds were cringed at this, but Lisa didn't seem to mind. Morbid feelings had always been fascinated in a Goff sibling, who wasn't really anything new to her. Lola and Lana tensed up a bit, but stayed calm. As for Lily, she tried to turn away, being still too young to form the situation. Once the incision had been fully made and the skull had been reached, Lisa fetched away a few metal fastened clips and the tray, and then hooked onto the flesh just above the incision, just to keep the skin flap held in place. We're ready to make the skull incision. This part might be a bit loud, Dr. Lloyd informed. Wicked, Lucy said, then softly, as one of Dr. Lloyd's assistants handed Lisa a cardinal saw, which had been slightly resembled of a large dentist drill, that only would have a circular saw blade instead of half of the dollar coin at the end of instead with a drill bit. The assistants with a special marker to use to mark the part of the skull then need to be cut. Once that area was marked, Lisa switched on the saw, and which was surprisingly loud. It sounded like similar to where a dentist drill would sound, only a little bit lower pitch. Very carefully, Lisa gently cut the mark of the areas of Lincoln's skull, being careful not to push in too deep. A loud grinding sound to vibrate in Lisa's ears, and slowly cut off the skull, and then causing one of the bone dust to fly over her outfit and mask. This was a crucial moment, so Lisa put on her focus into making the cut rather brush off the dust. The Castrades, the Louds, and Link and Clyde were all observant of how well Lisa was able to perform such a dangerous surgery like this. Yet they weren't too surprised of knowing how intelligent Lisa was. Once the incision had been complete, Lisa switched off the saw and placed it back down on the surgical tray. I must say, this was a lot louder than I expected, Lisa exclaimed, wiping the bone dust off her outfit. Yes, the cardinal saws do tend to be pretty loud, Dr. Lloyd replied, fetching a pair of metal grabbing claws from the tray. What we will need to do is remove the skull fragment, and then make an incision with the extra duraflip, and then the brain will be exposed. Perfect, Lisa said, as Dr. Lloyd gently gripped onto the small half-dollar-sized skull fragment, and then put on the grippers, and then gently pried it out, placing it onto a small collection tray nearby. Once this was done, the assistants had made a plus-shaped incision on the duraflip. Lincoln's brain was then gently pried out from them, and placed onto a smaller restrained clips on them to hold them back. With the dura now fully opened, Lincoln's brain was fully exposed, and this means it was made for the main event. And this would be the moment that identified Lisa's intelligence and knowledge, and as well as the fate of Lincoln's future. Now it's time for the moment that you have all been waiting for, Lisa said. Then she glanced over at the surgeons. Let's bring in the CNI unit. The two surgeons went through the door in preparation room where the CNI unit was sparked in, and then Lisa followed along. A few minutes after they entered, the Louds and the Castrades and Link and Clyde saw the doors open, and Lisa was the first to emerge from the doors, and following close behind her were two surgeons, one of them wheeling the CNI unit room into the surgery room, and its navigational headlights were also in the main sensor array on top of the glowed radiant blue as the surgeon gently pushed it over to where Lincoln was, and Lisa guiding him to where the right direction was. So this was the CNI unit? Ronnie Ann asked at the sight of awe in such advanced machine. Indeed it is, Lynn Sr. replied. Lisa and all the sisters built it. Let's just hope it works. I'm sure Lisa knows what she's doing, Lori assured him. She managed to get this far without any issues, so I'm pretty sure everything will go smoothly. Making those incisions into Lincoln's head and skull was only the first part, but now Lisa has to do the main part we've been waiting for, and this is injecting the man-knives into Lincoln's brain, Lynn Jr. said. Lisa, I pray your machine will bring your brother back right into the light, Lisa said in a grim tone. Everyone else ignored that remark as the surgeons aligned the CNI unit up behind Lincoln. Dr. Lloyd then tapped a few foot pedal near the bottom of the surgical table, causing it slowly to raise upwards towards the standing position, restraining the straps holding Lincoln in place, and the table finally stood up. Dr. Lloyd had been trapped over another pedal, which slowly lowered the upper part of the surgical table halfway down, making it look as if Lincoln was bowing. All right, Lincoln's in position, Dr. Lloyd announced, turning to Lisa. That is your cue. Right away, Lisa nodded, dragging the metal sound of the tool of the CNI unit, allowing her to reach the control panel.